understanding causality. In this session, I'll just maybe give us a summary of what we are expecting to do, to learn at the end of this session. And from there we can take it up. So maybe three few outcomes we're expecting. One is to explain the different notions of causal relationships. We are going to do that. We're also going to learn how to apply causality in our research. And we will also be able to appraise a given causal research so that we'll be able to interrogate a research and see if it is causal, if it is something else. We are going to describe some other things beyond causal research. So, but before I do that, I think we can start from maybe exposing ourselves to what we know and what we do not know. What type of research do we do? Are they really, when we use the word causal research, do you appreciate what I want to say? What do you mean by causal research? Causal research. Do anybody have any idea? Yes, Emmanuel. Yahaya? Dad. Okay.
A research involving connections of variables.
Good. A research involving connection of variables.
Yes.
Okay. I think it's a starting point. Any other suggestion? Yeah. Steven?
Something has to do with empiricism.
Empiricism.
Empirical research.
Empirical research.
Where you observe the relationship between two or more variables.
Okay. Observing relationship between two or more variables. Yes. Norma?
And I think in the relationship between the two variables, one is responsible for the other.
A step further. It's just not beyond just looking at variables, but one should be responsible for the other one. Yes, good. Yes.
A research aimed at finding out the effect of a particular problem and the causes of that problem.
Okay. I think we're all there. We're all there. Back to our own experiences. Yes, Daniel, you wanted to say something?
I was going to add that both variables for causal research, they're trying to see if one variable, if the outcome of something is or was as a result of a particular variable.
Brilliant. You are looking at outcome, and they are looking back to be sure of what was responsible for that outcome, and they are looking at causal research. Brilliant. Yes. Example?
For instance, I looked at British foreign policy in Sierra Leone and why the change in government in 1997 saw a change in Britain taking a more proactive. So basically what caused the Labour government to take a more proactive action in Sierra Leone than the previous Conservative government when the conflict started.
Okay. So from what I'm hearing here, I think I have no job this morning. I have absolutely nothing to do. Because if you know it, and I've been doing it, then what it means that I have nothing to do this morning. But because PASGR had asked me to be here to coordinate this morning session, I have to stay here for the next 1 hour or two. Maybe in the process of doing that, may also see more other things and see maybe others who have really done this will share their experiences. And some of us who are not so comfortable with it may begin to think about doing something that they are doing. Or maybe if there's a better way of doing it, we can also learn. I think that's the main reason why I should continue to stay. If not, I will say to have a beautiful day. Okay, that's good.
We're going to learn.
Yes. Okay, so let's discuss together, sharing our experiences on causality. So, we are going to look at this from maybe a broader perspective, looking at descriptive studies and looking at causal studies. And maybe from there we can begin to see the possibilities and what we are doing maybe before now and what we needed to do from now. Surely, different type of analysis, what will determine the type of analysis you do will be based on if you are focusing on a descriptive study or you are focusing on causal studies. But the challenge we have here, as we're going to maybe observe later from our own experiences, is that sometimes we may be dealing with description and you assume that it's causal. And if you finish doing that, it may become very difficult for policy people to separate what we're doing from causal. And if it's not causal, it may become also difficult for policy interventions. And that's why we should be very clear about description, separating it from causality. So that even the policy actors will appreciate the arena where you're operating from. And they'll be able to base their decision. If it's on description, they should know. Rather than maybe doing a descriptive study and claiming causality. And it may be a little bit problematic. I think I'm happy with where we are starting. At least most of us understand what we mean by causality and description. However, can I also go back a bit with us in terms of our experiences? What type of studies do we do? We have agreed that you do causal. Some people have mentioned causal. But do you do descriptive studies at all? Can we share experience and tell us maybe the type of studies you did that to classify as descriptive? Can you get one input? Historical? Then when you say historical, what do you mean?
Narrating a story of a community or group.
Okay.
Yeah.
You are describing.
If I decide to tell my own story of my own village or my family from the ancestral to date, it's just describing what occurred.
Okay. All right.
Relating it with anything.
Okay.
Process tracing, basically tracing a particular process.
Maybe another ground rule didn't include is that people should raise their voices. Because if you are talking to yourself, you're also breaking the mutual respect rules. So please, when you are talking, please raise your voice a bit so that others will also appreciate what you are.
Yeah, I'm just saying that we could also refer to descriptive studies as process tracing, for example, where you trace, wherein you're simply describing a particular process. Say you want to basically just describe the policy process in Kenya or Nigeria, you're simply describing without looking at some of sort of the critical elements, and how connected those ones are. You're just simply describing that this is the way policy is made in Nigeria from A to Z.
Okay. So in addition, I would like also, brilliant, in doing that, maybe give you one example, if you can use your previous studies on what you did exactly, and so that I will appreciate it maybe more. Not theoretical this time, Yes.
In my field, we use a descriptive institutional approach where you describe the operation and the processes that formal institutional and informal institutional politics, how they take place. For example, when I did my PhD, I used this approach to describe the roles and functions of state legislatures. What are the functions, what ought to be their functions, and I went to observe to see whether what we have in reality is what we are taking off.
Okay.
So that's what.
Okay, that's brilliant. And I think it has its own merit, because what you feel may not be what is on ground. So you need really to validate some of it you are thinking. Yeah, Norma, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I wanted to say that sometimes you can also do studies on prevalence of a particular issue.
Yeah.
For instance, I did the prevalence of selfie taking among adolescents in Nigeria.
The description, yes. You just want to know the prevalence and maybe the patterns, who is doing it more. Is it among the young or the old, among men or women? And when we are dealing with that, we are dealing with description. Am I right? It has its own merits too. Lynn, have you done any study before?
I haven't done any before, but maybe I can quote some anthropological studies, like some of the work of Margaret Lee. What people descriptive, trying to find the culture of people in Samoa. That would be descriptive.
So yes,
Descriptive in the sense that questionnaire is used to collect data from the respondent, and the analysis of the data is described as a descriptive statistic.
okay. I think we can come back to that, because we are going to deal with, we have a method, more or less something of methods here. We're going to talk about mixed methods. So we may be dealing with that more. Maybe you can use questionnaire to collect both qualitative, or you can do description, data you collected through questionnaire. It can also be causal. It depends on the analysis, the level of analysis you are doing. and you focus on the study. But I agree with you, you can collect data through questionnaire and end up with description. It's possible. So, but we're going to do that. Yes. Evelyn?
Yeah, thank you
Yes.
so much. First of all, I should actually put a right there. I'm more from a business-oriented perspective. So it is actually my first time to interact with the more typical social research. But then going back to descriptive, normally it's more when you want to talk about or interrogate further a phenomenological issue. Just purely what pertains on that phenomenon. End of story. We're not looking in terms of how does it actually affect the society. I just want to know what is the character of Evelyn. So what I deal with is simply describe Evelyn's character and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't go beyond asking how does Evelyn's character actually influence Lynn or this. That is our understanding from my business perspective.
I think your understanding from business perspective should be our understanding of what it is. I think all disciplines are the same. When they are dealing with description, it should be description, whether from business or from sociological, anthropological, whatever. I think it's the same thing. So now the question is, under what circumstances should we undertake either descriptive or causal studies? Although our focus this morning is on causality, but we should also acknowledge that description is important in certain types of research. But we don't do description for description's sake. And we don't also engage in causal studies because we just want to establish causality. There must be something on ground before you do that. And what circumstances? I can open up discussion on that so that we don't need... There are two main conditions for thinking of either doing description or going causal. And from the business perspective, if you want to describe a phenomenon, you may be, to understand what a phenomenon is, you may be dealing with description only. But if you want to make a step to see how this particular variable translates to changing the other variable, then you are already moving on the realm of causality. But these things are not just from nowhere. What should guide us should be the theory environment or the data environment. And when I talk about theory environment, I don't want us to go back to our basic thinking in our graduate school, theoretical framework, theories of this. I should just use the word, the basic explanations of a particular phenomenon. If it is well established in terms of theory, then you may begin to think of certain type of studies. Also, if data environment means what is known about empirical studies, evidence, that are there. If it's very rich that we have overwhelming empirical evidence, there's type of study we should be targeting. So we can do maybe a typology of it and see the type of things we should be doing. When Evelyn was talking about describing a phenomenon, when you have very poor theory environment and the data environment is also very poor, what do? You may just be developing descriptions. Nothing is known about a phenomenon. What do? You have to first of all tell us what it is. You cannot begin to say that this is related to this or this causes this if you do not even know anything about a particular phenomenon. So you may start off with description. And some of us in anthropological studies, that's what they usually do. A society is not much is known about a society. An anthropologist will go in there. There's no theory explaining any behavior. They don't even know what they're doing. In short, I can start from psychological perspective, where I'm a psychologist by training. I'm a business psychologist anyway. So, if, for example, you want to look at maybe intelligence, and nobody has known anything about intelligence, you can't say that people who are intelligent are going to be more productive workers because we don't even know what intelligence is. Am I right? So the first starting point is to describe intelligence. To understand what constitutes intelligence. When you say an intelligent person, what is it? Then you can begin to describe some dimensions, some components of intelligence. You can tease out certain things. And you can say because of this, if you are doing this, if you are doing this, if you have this, you are an intelligent person. Once you have known that, then other scientists can move on from there to say, since this is intelligence, those who are intelligent, they can now begin to make some proposals. And what do? they can begin to maybe test hypotheses. However, there's a situation where maybe the theory environment is rich a bit, but not much is known about that particular phenomenon in a particular setting. You can do description in another context. And that's where I will bring a lot of caution, and that's actually what we do here in this part of the world. Most scholars here will tell you that because of nothing has been known about particular certain things, they are doing a study of that in social environment. It's always difficult to explain that to scientists, because that thing that is happening in that particular environment is not so peculiar to warrant scientific inquiry. I'll give you an example. I'm the current editor of our journal in Nigeria. And the first set of, when I became the editor, the first set of manuscript that came was saying they were studying some maybe motivational issues among workers. And they said they are studying it in Ibadan area. And the last studies were in Lagos. They have been done in Lagos, they have been done in the southeast, but no study has been done in Ibadan axis. So for him, he can begin a description of a phenomenon in Ibadan. And I was wondering, what is so peculiar about Ibadan? And they're talking about commercial banks. And maybe half of the people in Ibadan were posted from Lagos. Or they moved from the southeast or from Abuja. And he's now trying to describe a phenomenon and tell us that it's so marvelous and worth scientific inquiries. What I just did was just to put a question mark. Please start a new story. This story cannot fly. And also, sometimes we may also feel that something was done in Europe, done in US, maybe done in South Africa and North Africa, East Africa, but has not done in Western Africa. And we say we start a new study. For a typical, and you are going to send these papers for people, for editors, and unfortunately, about 99% of top line editors in the world are Euro-Americans. It's unfortunate. But that's also what is the reality on ground. 99% of top editors in the world are from this part of the world. And you are writing something and telling them you are dealing with South Africa, you are describing a phenomenon in Africa, but it has been described and well established in East Africa. And we assume that a white man will understand. They will not. For him or her, every black man, irrespective of where you are coming from, are from one family and one country. In short, they see Africa as a country. Are you aware of that? In short, once you move out of Africa and are discussing with a typical European, and he sees you, a black man, he sees a Kenyan, he say, he's from your place. He say, no, he's not from, he's from Kenya. Yes. Do you know him before now? For him, who will eat from the same pot, who really...
But even we Africans, we can also be guilty of that.
Of course.
For instance, I could recall we were going through Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta.
Yeah.
And then somebody just blurted, oh, West Africa, you West Africans, all here.
Yeah.
And I was saying, well, is West Africa a country?
Yeah, you. Yes, I'm sure that's a challenge. Yes. I think you can appreciate it. So you are telling a white man that you have done something in West Africa, and it has been done in East Africa and Southern Africa and wherever. And for him or her, we are the same, and our culture are the same. And that's what you are saying, that peculiar here is not peculiar for him. Whatever is happening in Nigeria should be the same thing happening in Kenya, should be the same thing for him, even in South Africa, even in North Africa, for goodness sake. For him, even in Egypt, Algeria, we are more or less related more to those within Spain, wherever in Europe. They may have even more, their culture may be nearer than what you see from here. But for them, Africa is one country. So what it means, I'm saying, yes, you can describe something in another context, but you should do that with caution. You should do that with caution, because you really need to prove that they are different, and you should establish these differences. Some of us who also get rejection from who write, because once you send papers, you must get rejection. The more you send, the more you get. The highest level of number of rejection I got was when I was in my Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship between 2017 and 2018. It seems that every week I will get a rejection. Every week. For obvious reasons, I was submitting more papers because I was doing nothing but writing. So, and most of the papers I had even before I went to Europe, I started writing them and cleaning them up. So I was getting more rejections. And at a point, I was feeling that the gods of my whatever, the sins of my forefathers have followed me from Nigeria to Europe. But what happened? Within around 2018 to 19, I published about 20 of them. So you knew what it is, and the best journals on earth. So we started cleaning them up, they come there. But the major criticism we usually have is that you want to say that something is happening even in Africa, because theories are well established. And once I have a theory explaining something, human beings are the same. For you to say that this theory does not apply to Africa, it's very difficult to prove, especially in business world. Why should a businessman who can motivate, there's well-developed theories of motivation, well-developed theories of support system in the organization, why do we feel that it works in US, it worked in Europe, it worked in Asia, why shouldn't it work here?
Yeah.
Do you understand? Okay, please, Michael.
This is actually a very important issue, because this was the subject of a panel that I participated in just recently in June in Montreal.
Yeah.
The International Public Policy Association conference. And the issue was about the applicability of Western-inspired theoretical traditions in public policy.
Yeah.
And the panel was to interrogate whether, in fact, those theories, how applicable are those theories?
Yeah.
Because there has been what I would refer to as some sort of subaltern reaction to this so-called Western concepts that some theories, some African scholars will find problematic when taken to Africa. So what I did was to look at a particular practice, which is evidence-based policy making, and to see this one is actually based on Laswell stages approach to the policy process.
Yeah.
And the idea was, how applicable was this? And the panel was actually, we all were meant to challenge. And so, yes, there are theories that you can say they are applicable, but are they powerful enough to explain what's happening in the African context?
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
So yes, you might say the stages approach. What I found in the case of Sierra Leone was that there's no way the way policy as conceived by Laswell is applicable to a particular area of policy making, which was the free healthcare policy.
Yeah.
So I couldn't find any evidence that actually it went through the sort of stages that had been proposed.
Yeah.
Rather, what I found was that the president made a proclamation, and then people have to work backwards.
Yeah.
And in the case of the UK, no. There will be the sort of agenda setting and then all the sort of process. But in Africa, it's not as neatly applicable as we would have it on paper.
Then what it means is that you have a case. And so what we want to establish is that once you have that, you have a case to describe in another context. It's okay, we're not saying it's absolute, but we have to be careful with that. It's not just when a scholar just starts and says, yes, it has been done here, but nothing is done here, so we need to know. Yeah. That you are knowing, is it adding any value? It may also be reproducing, reinventing the word. You're also producing the knowledge you know about the phenomenon, so you are not doing anything. That's just the issue. It's not every theory that fits everywhere. And so there's no theory of everything. So that's it. Okay, so but for example, assuming that that environment is rich, but whatever, theory is poor. What are you going to do? You are going to explore causality. You have data, but nothing is known so much that is causing certain things. What you'll be doing is to explore causality. Because you don't know the reason why these things are happening. What are you trying to do? You will be exploring causality. And that's actually why policy is important. That's why policymakers should be interested in your work. Yes, I have evidence to prove that this is this, but there's nothing explaining it. What are you trying to do? You are going to explore the causes, why these things are happening the way they're happening. And what it means is that we'll begin to produce evidence that will help us to introduce interventions. Am I right?
You're right.
That's actually what should be the guiding principle. Why should policymakers? I was discussing in a one-day program. I was invited by the Nigeria Political Science Association in their last conference in Calabar. That was sometime a month plus. Yes, I was in that conference, and I did about 2-3 hours presentation on why they should be emphasizing producing evidence for Nigeria political science. Yeah. For obvious reasons. Why should? Because all governors, President of the Federal Republic for the past 20 years have been appointing anybody, bricklayers, whoever they want as chief chief political, whatever. What do they call them? Special advisor, political, whatever. I say, why are they not appointing political scientists? The simple reason is that they are not producing enough evidence to convince the politicians. Because if you are producing evidence that's overwhelming, it's most likely they know, and you are the only person producing it. So that's actually the challenge. Because if you don't have any reason why things are leading to this, why should a governor employ you as a political whatever? And they know they pay you a lot of money. So, but once you begin to explore causality and seeing why things are happening the way they're happening, it's most likely that people will listen to you more. And that's our major reason for focusing here on causality rather than description. But we're not saying that you can't describe. However, most of the studies we do here is on this quadrant. Testing hypothesis. I'm coming back. I will quickly come back. Do you want to?
No, I was just going to ask you as an editor for journal. You see a paper, how much of description in this particular paper is acceptable? And how much of actually looking at the analysis in which you try and establish some causality or you test a particular hypothesis?
I know that all editors, all writers, you look for many things. If the purpose of the study is descriptive, what you need to do is for the person to produce evidence, convincing reason why the person should be doing description. But if it is on causality, what do we do? You need to also look at the methods the person has employed, whatever, to produce whatever he's claiming. That's actually why we're interested in the methodology, not actually the outcome. We want to see, did you follow the rigors required to produce the evidence you are claiming? We're going to, as we discuss this, we begin to appreciate that most of the things we are doing, most of us have doctorate, but if you look back at that doctorate, you rather ask them to start afresh because we have produced evidence that are nothing, that is not convincing to ourselves, but you have awarded a doctorate. And we are not going to say that you should return it to us. You should have it, but you should move a step to start producing something that is better. That's actually the story. The story is that every editor, it depends on level of journal, every editor, every whatever, policymakers are looking for overwhelming evidence. If you are doing description, do it well. If you are doing whatever causal studies, do it very well, so that we'll be able to understand. But in this part of the world, we're not doing anything well at all. And that's why we don't also have top journals here. You can count the number of journals publishing good papers in the whole of Africa. In short, in my area, we have maybe one or two that are publishing very top papers. In my area, it's only maybe South African Journal of Industrial Psychology and South African Journal of Psychology. Okay, Journal of Psychology in Africa, about 2, 3, 4 journals in my area in Africa, publishing real good papers. Others are just maybe association journals trying to be responsible to the society. People want to get promoted. Sometimes people even flow their own journals and publish for their friends. So, but those are the fraud in Africa. So we have to live with it if we continue to think. But if we really want to do what we are doing here, then we begin to see that there is a need to start taking ourselves serious. Because if we don't take ourselves serious as academics, it's not likely that the policymakers and the world will take us serious. If we don't produce something that is good, yeah. And that's why I normally encourage my colleagues who talk about impact factor, whatever, you need to publish in impact factor journal. I say we should go beyond that. It's not just about publishing in good journal, but also producing evidence that is good enough for yourself and for the society. And once you start in that step, the world is sky is your limit. There's nothing you cannot do. Publishing is no more an issue. Personally, for me, I don't think about publication anymore. What I try to do is to look at quality of what I'm producing. It's no more about number. I don't need numbers. But even if I need number, every year I should be able to produce what is enough to promote a profession. A typical in normal journals. So what is it? So what it means is to go deeper, to start looking at the ones that will change myself, change my community, and change the world. And that means a lot of rigor, developing more skills. And that's one step we're taking here. And I'm sure by the end of 10 days, we'll be able to pick some skills that will push us to increase what we have and do even more. Even if not for us, also for our students. Yes. So that's it. So the last one is testing hypothesis, most of the things we do. The theories are established. We have data here and there, but we want to test a particular knowledge. Maybe how the data behave. Maybe in this, can this lead to this? Although this is working, are they related to this? What are you doing? We are just testing hypotheses. Because that's actually what we do in most graduate schools, and that's what is expected. Because if you start from the unknown, you may not finish the doctorate. It's always difficult. In short, most supervisors will ask you to tell us, to do a concept note. And when they didn't see enough literature on that area, they assume that you may not be able to complete it because it's time-bound. It's time-bound. So we needed to be swimming around theories and literature so that we'll be able to test a particular knowledge. Maybe push the knowledge a little bit, add to what we know. So we are just testing hypotheses. But you cannot test hypotheses if there's no theories. Am I right? It's not likely that you test hypotheses. You can answer questions. You can raise research questions. You can explore. But if you don't have theories, you must have a base before you hypothesize. Am I right? So that's why almost all the papers in graduate school are testing hypotheses, especially those in quantitative science. But those in maybe qualitative can do a whole lot of description. If they see what is going on and they feel it's not well known, they can go deep to do some descriptions. Yeah. Prof,
how
yes.
do you go about building theories? Because one of what these people had identified as shortcomings of African scholars is the ability for us to build theories and not simply be relying on Western inspired. Yeah. So how do we go about building theories?
Okay. I think I can throw it back to the class because this is a social science discussion, more or less. How do you build theories? But I would rather say that before we discuss, building theory is difficult.
Yeah.
It will require a lot of knowledge. And also, it's also a difficult place to prosper for various reasons. For example, in my area and business, we have only one major journal publishing theoretical paper, Academy of Management Review. And that's where every person in the best of the world, in Harvard, Yale, Stanford, best universities in the world are struggling within that space. And they publish about 10, 12 papers in one volume. So all the professors are in the whole world, all scholars in the whole world are struggling in that small space to publish theoretical paper that make impact. But what happens in Africa is that people claim they're building theories. They build weak theories, no ideas. They just wake up one morning and say theory of this. And they publish it in one small journal, they float it. It doesn't go anywhere. Before you do that, you need to also be in the space where we're discussing theories and see how the existing theory, why we are challenging these theories in a very systematic manner. And that's what it is. But even in building theories, you also need evidence. You need to develop some understanding. You need maybe in a different context so that we'll be able to build theories. We are going to mention that when we deal with research questions. There's different ways of doing that. But building theory is important, but it's not something you wake up one morning to think maybe from from your kitchen and wake up in the morning and say, yes, I built a theory of this. Everybody start applying it. It doesn't work that way. Yes, Evelyn, please.
Thank you so much. My thinking was one, I'm looking at the diversity that we have, even within this one.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel we're moving so much ahead.
Yeah.
And humbly, I'm just looking at we are the introduction bit of it.
Yeah.
So when do I go descriptive? When do I come to casual?
Yeah.
Once maybe we're through with all of us coming to the same understanding, then when we now start looking at the issues of exploring causality among others, then we can all go into the deeper aspect of bits of that.
Good.
That is just kind of my humble request.
Okay, that's good.
Keep on saying to go so much ahead advance.
Yeah.
Then some of us are still behind here.
I appreciate.
Some of us come from qualitative perspective.
Yeah.
So we talk about hypotheses and I'm not even
Understand what it is.
quantitative is. I'm left out from the discussion. That is my humble submission.
Brilliant. I think we should accept that. Okay. All right.
As a follow-up to my question, I wanted to understand, or I thought I have understood that this part of the quadrant is, so the left side is descriptive study. So I do descriptive study when I need to develop description and then description in different contexts. I wanted to confirm whether testing hypotheses will be classified as a causal study, or is it just the exploring causality that is causal study?
Okay, that's good. I think you are right. This is really what we're dealing with. Causality. Exploring causalities here.
The testing hypothesis, will it be descriptive study again?
No. It may not fall into descriptive, it may not fall into causal, but you are doing something. The phenomenon is well described, is known, you have data there, but there's something we want to test. You know, what do we mean by hypothesis? Maybe by tomorrow, that's what we'll be dealing with. When we talk about hypothesis, it's just a statement that this should be related to this. And you go to the field to generate data again, a new set of data. Though there's existing knowledge about it, you generate a new set of data to test if those things are true or not. You say yes or no, and you go home and relax. But it speaks to the research community. If this is true, then what do we do? Then that's why you begin some recommendations. If this is true, then we'll do this and do this and do this. But your major focus is not to explore if this causes this. However, because research is more broader, I don't want us to go so fast. It's broader than that. Even in testing hypothesis, we may make can make meaning out of it that may speak to causality. You understand? You may make some meaning out of it that speaks to causality. But your major way of tracing and establishing solid causality will not be testing hypothesis. You understand? Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, follow up on what you just said. The possibility of combining description and causality, tracing causality in one study. A situation where you try to describe the phenomenon and you want to find out how that phenomenon influences another. Is there any possibility?
Brilliant. This introduction, that's actually why we're here. In some studies, we're going to do a mixed method. We are going to explore description. From description, you can move on to explore causality. But they should be systematic. Because if you don't know anything about a phenomenon, you have to know about it first. When you have known, then you know to tell us how this moves to become this. It can be in one single study. In short, it's even recommended. Because if you end up describing, you have not done much. And you cannot jump into causality if you have not described, because you miss a lot of issues. So that's actually, I'm really happy at this stage that all of us are on the same page. Okay. All right. Okay, then we are now back to focus on causality. Why must we focus on causality? And we'll just quote one of our great authors, Gering. Gering said, we wish to know not only what happened, but also perhaps more critically, why these things happen. We are saying that descriptive studies are very good. Extremely good. It's good to describe. But you cannot end up describing alone. We should step up to say, why are these things happening? How are these things happening? And that's actually why causality is very, very important in research. I will give an example. Assuming that there is fire outbreak here, in this room, that may be consumed of the whole of this block, and the Director General of IITTA, if he comes here, will not be asking us what happened. He may start with what happened, but that's not his major target. If he ended up with saying what happened, we'll say that there was fire break. The windows were burning. It was burning up and out. So some people ran away from this place. Some people, he will be listening. It's not a useless information. Am I right?
Yeah.
But that's not what he wants to know. What you know, how did it happen and why did it happen, so that it can prevent future occurrences. Am I right? Yeah. And that's why causality is important. He's not going to just send what happened in terms of where it started, how many people got injured, how did they escape. Yes, it's okay. But his major reason for asking is to stop future occurrences. And that's why causality is important. What caused this fire outbreak? How did it happen and why did it happen? And they continue to trace it. So you're going to have a kind of committee of whatever. They start tracing, is it from electricity? Is it from negligence from staff? They will start to isolate factors that are responsible for this fire outbreak. And they continue tracing it, they get to the end. Am I right? And that's why not only researchers, and we know policymakers are so much interested in this, but increasingly, scholars, editors are also becoming more interested in causality. If you read top journals, in your area. Journal of Public Policy. You are in political science, American Journal of Political Science Review. We are in economics, whatever, American Journal of Economics or whatever, Economic Review, Econometrica, or in Psychology, Journal of Applied Psychology, in Geography, maybe, what top journal do you have in Geography? Maybe Journal of Ecology, Journal of whatever, Climate Change. If you go to these journals today, and they are reading any paper published there, you can begin to see element of causality. The description, first page, first results can describe, but that's the end of it. The next thing is to tell us why are these things happening the way they're happening, whether they are qualitative, whether they are quantitative. Because those in qualitative study will tell you, no, what I just will do is just to describe. No. You cannot publish top qualitative papers if you are not telling people why these things are happening the way they're happening. There's high level of mortality. You describe the mortality. 10 died in northern state of county in Kenya. 500 died here, and so what? They want to know why these things are happening. If you're able to describe how they're happening, it can be descriptive, it can be quantitatively, it doesn't matter. But the important thing that there is a kind of an explanation how these things are happening. If you are doing that, is most likely are going to be speaking not only to policymakers, you also be speaking to today's editors and reviewers. That's the question they usually ask. And so what? Why? So that's it. So it's not getting is not alone in that. All of us will be thinking of that. So maybe I just have this to show why we should be doing causal studies. Just a kind of a takeoff point. Why we should have confidence that causality matters. So maybe to understand our world better, maybe to hold people and institutions accountable for the actions. Because if you say that this causes this, you should be able to trace who is responsible for that. Am I right? Okay. Also to provide a basis for well-informed policy actions, that interventions. Because if you are dealing with causality and you have produced evidence, if you want to have intervention, we should have a point of intervention. If you don't do that, why do policy interventions fail? They fail because we have no strong evidence and that inform policymakers. If you see the way we write, the way we publish, I'm sure that those of you that are still in graduate school, when you see their recommendations, it will have no business with their results. The recommendation will be what they had in mind before they enter the graduate school. How the system will work. They will start recommending the government should employ more people. Government should invest more money. But this project has nothing to do with employment, has nothing to do with investment. So he's produced an evidence, but because the evidence is so weak and doesn't have any meaning to all of us, he will abandon the evidence he produced and go and start saying something else that somebody did sometime in the past. So, meaning that you should be able to produce strong evidence and leverage on your evidence to do your recommendation. Am I right? So, and if you don't do that, then you are losing a lot. And if you are not dealing with causality, if you have ended up describing, it's most likely the evidence you have produced through description will not be able to change policies. And that's the disconnect. And I think we can appreciate that. So, causality is also about selecting something we are going to get back to. It's about moving to very minor thing. In most studies we do here, all of us are PhD supervisors. The temptation of our students trying to do everything is the starting point of their problems. No single researcher will finish all the things that are required to do. If we finish it, then we'll have no job again. What it means that we all lose our jobs. Because I have my job because there are more things to study. There are new things to discover. Once we finish everything, then we'll lose our job and begin to think of maybe going to the factories. So, but students will try to do one single study that covers everything. And sometimes you have their thesis, 200 pages, not connected in any way. Maybe for training purposes, they can do such a thing, but no study can be published that does everything. Every study is focused on something. And once you'll be able to prove that you have found something, it's enough for the world science. And you can publish those papers, even in nature and science. Once it's focused and you have solved a particular problem. Okay. All right. So I've already done say this. So we'll move on. Then what is the cause? Yes?
Something that is responsible for another.
Something that is responsible for another thing is a cause. Okay. It's a starting point. Because starting point of anything is to start trying. Toothboy say do something. Let's do something. We'll start by doing something. Something responsible for something. I think it's a cause. What do you think?
Based on
Kemi, yes.
that we read.
Slowman. Thank you. You are bringing Slowman back here. The check and...
Yes, a cause is something without which another thing would not happen. If I can put it that way. An event without which, if it did not happen, another event could not have happened.
Okay. So there's something there. An event, if that event is not there, no subsequent event of that nature will happen. Okay. Brilliant. Okay, please.
I think to be is a premise, like a condition for a conclusion. Before you conclude, you must have a premise.
Okay.
Or like something like explanatory factor.
Explanatory factor. A premise, explanatory factor. Yes. Any other thing? Okay, we can also make an attempt to describe our own cause. We can see this as a cause. X as a cause. Y as an outcome. Then there's something we are having here that is very important for all of us, the Z. We are going to come back to that later. But this is Bobby Jack. X. And this, what is this? Broken window. That is the outcome. Bobby Jack needed to be here for the window to get to this level. Am I right? Yes. But the presence of Bobby Jack alone may not lead to a broken window. And that Bobby Jack even did something may not also lead to a broken window if this Z is not here. And this Z changes, the window may not break, even when Bobby Black has done the same thing. I was saying that this Z changes to, this is a tennis ball. If it changes to a pepper, just a leaf. Although Bobby Jack will do the same thing, but the window will not be broken. That's why mechanism is important in our understanding of causality. And that's the starting point of doing high-level research. To understand that this mechanism is important in the causal relationship. What we have been dealing with in most of our studies is to focus on this and this. Focus on S and Y. How this is related to this, how this is doing this. But nobody cares about the mechanisms that are involved that produces the outcome. And it's this mechanism that produces the outcome is so critical even for policy actors. Because that's the intervention point. If we have been having this and this outcome over time, what we need to do is to trace the reasons why these things are leading to this. Once you know the chains of events that starts from here and follow here till it gets to here, you are doing something. And the intervention becomes easy. So what it means is that once you break this chain, if you want to intervene, change this. Once you change this, although this will be here, but the outcome will be different. And that's actually what it means. So we can go in more details. With this is really simple. So a cause or causal factor is an independent variable because I want all of us to come to or be on the same page. We have people who are quantitative in this class. We have people who are qualitative. So they use different languages. Am I right? So but we can come at on the same page after this. So we can use them interchangeably. So a cause is what we may call a causal factor. Or X. We can use the word X. We can call it independent variable for those of us who deal a lot with quantitative. Then an outcome is what we may call the dependent variable. We can call it Y for our discussion in this room. You can call it the outcome variable or whatever. Then the mechanism is the intermediary. In those who deal with quantitative, they call it mediators. Am I right? Is anybody doing regression analysis a lot? Anybody here? Yes, you do it. So we'll talk about what we call it, mediation tests. And when we talk about mediation tests, those mediators are what we call mechanisms. Also, those in economics can model them, put them in a model and see how they are playing out. Okay, are we all in the same page? I think you should just note something. Do less of writing, so you don't use your energy so much. Unless you want to qualify what you don't have here, you can add. But what you have here, you have it already. Okay. All right. Okay. Then more description. This is more or less just to say it in a way, that if we live without giving this definition, people will say they didn't define it. But I think we have appreciated what it is. Am I right? We all know what a cause is now. Because a cause is to say that a factor X is a cause of an outcome Y. It's to say that change in X generates a change in Y, just like Kemi mentioned. So an event is producing something. So a change in X will produce a change in Y. But it's through a mechanism Z. And if that mechanism Z, if that change happens, it will change the Y relative to what Y would have been if the X was not there. And that's what we mean by counterfactual conditions. If X didn't happen, what would have been the condition of Y? It wouldn't have been the same. Am I right? And that's actually what we mean. If you trace the cause, if you trace an outcome, and realize that even if the X was not there, the outcome will remain the same. The X may not actually be the cause of that outcome. There may be other alternative explanations. And in everyday research, what people want to know is to demonstrate that this cause I have isolated is the only cause that is possible. The more you do it, the more you move to publishing in Nature Science. The more you do that, the more you move to publishing in science. The more you move to going to the government house. The more you do that. The less you do that, the more you push you away from nature, from science, from producing of National Academy of Science to lower level journal that your friends are publishing. The less you do that, the more you push yourself away from the federal government to state to local to your community to nothing. That's actually the story. Once you're able to produce an evidence that shows that this is the cause of this outcome and not the alternative cause, you are talking to scientists, you are talking to policymakers. But if the alternative causes, then they can as well talk to the other person. Or they are confused. And when you deal with all this, look at every study you are trying to do. Like some of you in quantitative. Why are you doing control? You try to tighten, because once you want to publish any top journal article, what they look at is weaknesses, the control, to demonstrate that this result is not valid. It's not valid because you didn't do this. You didn't do this. This could explain this. This could explain. And once they're able to puncture it, because that's what they do. They are paid to do that. The editors are paid to puncture those things. Once they puncture it up, in the evening you get the paper back. You sent it in the morning. In the evening you receive it. And that's actually it. And if you turn whatever you have on a table of policy actor, and you realize that, how did this, it cannot work. This evidence, no, it's not possible. This is weak. This explanation is not correct. It will not pass it will not get to the minister. The desk officer will just reject it at the point because he knows that the evidence is so weak. And that's actually what we'll try to do. Okay, yes, please.
Are we now moving towards the monocausal research?
Monocausal research.
Yeah.
We are going to come back to that. It may not be monocausal. Every problem has its own way of understanding it. Some problems are multifaceted, so you need that kind of combination. Some problem you can isolate one. But the more you isolate to one, and you'll be able to say that it's one, and it's only one, it's easier for every person, including policymakers. Everybody will like one problem.
Yeah.
But not every problem will have one issue that surrounds it. Am I right? So it depends on the type of things you are dealing with. But if we know that once you do something, poverty will be wiped out in Africa, wouldn't everybody follow that pattern? But sometimes it's not possible because it's not only one issue that will solve poverty. But whenever you get that, you are going to publish that social science study in Nature. Because we have done something that will know that. And in short, to begin to warm up for the Nobel Prize award. Once you have one solution that solves almost every problem. But that's the struggle of every scientist. Anything you do, try to know you isolate as many problems as possible. That's why when you want to deal with small issues. That's why causality is about focusing on something that's important. Once you have a broader problem, you also have broader factors. Am I right? If you have a smaller problem, you may also can isolate factors. So that's it. I think, Stephen, you appreciate what we want to. So, but we are going to come to those notions. There are different ways of understanding causality. It's not a one-way traffic place. Okay. So, just to explain, when we talk about counterfactual, can anybody say something? You read Sheikh Sloman. Yes. When we talk about counterfactual, what do you mean?
Well, that's the factor that if it did not exist, the results would not have happened. In the case of the, okay, I'm trying to position it now. In the case of the sheikh and the mistress and all that, if the mistress had not, I'm trying to remember who poisoned the water now. I think the wife poisoned
the water.
The wife poisoned the mistress.
Yeah.
So if, and eventually the sheikh died of
Dehydration.
Dehydration. So if the wife, the mistress had not punctured the oil, the sheikh wouldn't have died.
Okay.
He would have died. Water was poisoned.
Okay. So you say, can we hear from you?
Yeah, I think that the basis of that story was why the wife was angry at the mistress, so she poisoned him. But the mistress was interested in his wealth, and she wanted him dead, so she punctured it. And when she punctured it, all the water ran out. And when he was now thirsty, there was no water to drink, so he died of dehydration. The mistress reported the wife reported the mistress, and the mistress is guilty because the wife didn't get to drink the water.
Okay.
If he had drank the water, he would have died of the wife's poison.
Okay.
But because all the water drained, it was dehydration that killed him, which was what the mistress intended.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, it's the mistress that is responsible for his death. Because he did not die of poisoning, he died of dehydration.
Okay. That's a brilliant story also, telling about research. But that's something that we should take a little bit more serious when we are dealing with research. What it means is that if you are tracing causality, we needed really to be focused, and we also needed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that actually this causes this. Yes, it's possible that the sheikh would have died, but who knows? The poison may not be so poisonous to kill someone. So we are not bothered about that because it's not actually the cause of the death. So we can trace the death, and we are sure of why he died. There are other possibilities, but that's not actually the focus of. That's how research operates. There are other possibilities, but we're able to prove, and that's why when you finish a study, I'll give you an example of study that has continued to generate news every day, but nothing has happened. Something like cancer. People continue, and they are published in Nature and Science. They wake up one morning and start tracing something, and they conclude that this causes cancer. After about a year, another group of scientists from Harvard will start a new study, and they trace and say, so this causes cancer. And people, for now, what causes cancer, we do not know. But if you follow the rigors, yes, if you follow the rigors that are doing, you can convince yourself that if this evidence are overwhelming, and this led to this, you can say, it's an answer to something, but it's not exclusive. Okay, all right.
Well, there is a notion of bounded rationality. Anyway,
yes.
And
that's it. So that's actually what we mean. So we'll move on. Okay. So counterfactual is about if condition. So established causality also requires that to think what the outcome would have been without the cause. And that's what we have been discussing for the past 10-20 minutes. If you can envisage what it will be without the cause, then you have started thinking about causality. Once you narrow down that it wouldn't have been what it is, then you are dealing with causality. It's now the cause that actually produces the outcome in its form, at whatever it is. Okay.